Right, okay, so we're on time, and I want to now introduce our guest speaker. He's a friend of Ramadan 10 Project. He's spoken at Ramadan 10 Project before, and for all of you who have followed us in the past, you'll definitely know this guy. He is the CEO of My Life and My Say. I want to introduce Mete Coban.
Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. I must say, I was just looking at the list of things to have tonight, and I'm slightly jealous of Maria from Bath, who's going to be having chickpeas with yogurt and pita bread. Something that definitely will I love that sort of style of food. So definitely very jealous. But just wanted to say again, massive thank you to Ramadan 10 Project. What you guys do is amazing. It's an honor for me to be here to be opening Iftar for the second year running now. Honestly, I think the work you do is truly tremendous, and we're obviously going through very difficult times right now with the coronavirus crisis. It means that loads of us will be apart from our loved ones and friends, myself included. I'm not having to spend time, unfortunately, with my family because my mother is a care worker and my father is a cab driver, so I have to be careful with how much I interact with them, for their own sort of health and of course for extended family too. So I know the sacrifice that you're making all during Ramadan, and I think hopefully we'll come out of this pandemic as much stronger as communities. And I think the work that Ramadan 10 Project is doing and Open Iftar, what you guys are doing is so important to be able to create this space. I mean, even for myself, just being here, with you all sort of just in the run up to Iftar, I think it's a special moment to sort of go through. I kind of want to introduce myself firstly. So I've got a number of different hats on. So my name's Mete. I'm from Hackney in London. I'm a councillor here for Stoke Newington. If you haven't been to Stoke Newington, it's the best place in London, the saying. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Stoke Newington. I first got elected to be a councillor in Stoke Newington at the age of 21 in 2014. I'm now in my second term as a councillor, and I'm also the chair of the Skills Economy and Growth Commission in Hackney. So that particularly looks at how we can make sure that people from sort of lower social income backgrounds can get into high school jobs. So we've got businesses like Amazon, their headquarters are in Hackney. We've got a lot of tech companies in Shoreditch. How do we make sure that those job opportunities are available to people, particularly from my background and people from similar backgrounds as well? I also run My Life, My Say, which is, as you've sort of introduced me, I founded it in 2013 with the aim of trying to create a space where young people can come together from different political backgrounds and really talk about issues without necessarily feeling the need to attach themselves to a political party. I actually remember when I was a student at the University of Greenwich, that Ramadan 10 Project was kicking off in SOAS, and I actually used to attend as a student as well. So it's great to see how many years have gone by. And then, having said that, I'm not too old, so it wasn't too long ago. But it's great to see. Honestly, the journey has been it's been remarkable to watch. And I think although we're slightly different in the sense that we're trying to get young people to vote in elections, I think what you do around sort of convening people from different backgrounds, because this isn't just for Muslims. When I was at Ramadan 10 last year, you had people from all walks of life coming together to break bread over Iftar, and it was a truly special sort of moment. I guess I'm here to talk about sort of the idea of belonging and social impact, and I think my story is one that sort of fits perfectly in line with sort of the idea of the sense of belonging and how much that has sort of deteriorated in many ways across many different communities in London, partly because we see so many different sort of social issues. So when you look at, for example, the average first-time buyer for property is 39 in the UK. The average first-time buyer for property spends £420,000 on a new property. On average, you need £106,000 for deposit. I think the coronavirus pandemic has, in many ways, exposed a lot of inequalities in society and has amplified it. When you look at the number of ethnic minority communities, people who've been affected by the pandemic, it's truly, obviously, you can see that it's disproportionately affected our communities. And partly the reason for that is because whilst the virus doesn't discriminate, so anyone can catch it. We saw that, Prince Charles had it. We saw that, the Prime Minister Johnson, he was obviously in intensive care. Thankfully, they're both doing very well now. But the reality is that the systems that we do live in, by default, do discriminate, which means that we're more likely to be on the forefront of actually contracting the virus. So, you know, when you look at the number of ethnic minorities who, for example, are working disproportionately in sort of lower income jobs or sort of in more sort of like insecure jobs, they obviously do not have the luxury to be able to sort of stay at home. You know, so in many cases you would hear members of the government saying, you know, stay at home, stay safe. Like my father's a self-employed driver, for example. It took them 4 weeks from the point at which they told people to stay at home till they assured people who are self-employed that they will be giving them their wages, 80% of their last 3 wages. And even that won't get to them till June. So, you know, thankfully in my family's position, you know, there's myself, there's my brother who can provide for our family, but you know, not everyone is that sort of that lucky. And, you know, in his case, you know, he has to weigh up whether am I going to stay at home and, you know, risk not being able to pay for my bills, or am I going to have to go out and actually have to earn money to pay for my bills? But then it comes with the risk of being able to, like, you may potentially end up catching the virus. So I think that's really important to know. And, you know, like my thoughts and prayers are with all of our key workers and all of those who have lost their lives during this pandemic. I came from Northern Cyprus in 1995. I'm born in 92. My family first came here to move to Hackney. On that journey, I think when we first moved to Hackney, when we saw the diversity here, it was definitely extremely welcoming. But little did we know about some of the social problems that existed in our society. So we had one of the highest rates of crime in the country, over a third of children living in poverty, more than half the schools shut down between 1997 to 2003. In fact, it was rated as one of the worst places to live by a UK broadcaster in 2006. Fast forward like 14 years now, I think the transformation has been unthinkable. You know, when you look at the fact that Hackney is now known as the hipster part of London, it's the home of the tech hub. You know, it's just remarkable in many ways. We even achieved the best secondary school exam results in 2017. But I guess, you know, this growth doesn't mean that we don't have problems. We still have problems, you know, going forward. You know, innovation itself hasn't fixed some of the deep underlying social issues that have existed for many decades in many ways. As I said earlier, house prices and rents have rocketed. Many local people, in particular young people, don't feel like this growth has worked for them. And it only works for people who've actually moved it into our borough. So when we're talking about a sense of community and belonging, I'm sure many of you will probably share the same experience, but I'm brought up on a council estate. And in the council estate, you know, we all had all of our friends where you kick football, play football with after schools. And, you know, everyone's mum was also like my mum as well. So, you know, when it was time for me to go home, my friend's mum would tell me to go home, and we had that real sense of community belonging. Whereas we actually see that level of sort of community spirit starting to deteriorate, partly because of the living conditions, partly because of the cost of living that I've alluded to. When you look at Hackney, for example, I know I keep giving the example of Hackney, but that's partly because where I'm from, and I want to give you factual evidence in terms of the information that I'm giving you. But we have more than 36% of children living in poverty in Hackney. So clearly some of that innovation and growth hasn't necessarily worked. And I could honestly say that as a councillor. And I think partly part of that is because I think we need to be honest with ourselves. And I think sometimes our politicians need to do the same too. I think growing up in a council estate, and partly because of my background too, I often felt powerless. I often felt neglected, and I often felt unheard, which is why I was so passionate about founding My Life, My Say, because I wanted to give young people the confidence to stand up and be counted when important decisions are being made about our futures. For our organization, we've extended beyond helping 40,000 young people face to face. We're best known for organizing something called Democracy Cafes. So it's a partnership that we have with Starbucks. And the idea is basically to convene young people from across the country to reignite the 17th century discussing politics over coffee, over a Frappuccino. We've done more than 100 of those in the last 2 years. Just recently, actually, 2 months ago, we ventured out to the United States. So we've done it in Washington, DC and New York. It seems so far away now. And funny enough, actually, we didn't talk about the pandemic because at the time that wasn't a sort of a priority at the time, or well, we thought it wasn't a priority anyway. The organization, has done remarkable work in making sure that young people's voices working to make sure that our voices are heard on Brexit. So we worked a lot with the European Commission and with government as well. But for me, I think, it's great to be an advocate for young people through an organization, through an NGO, but ultimately, I always wanted to be the voice of people, and I always wanted to make sure that I'm not in a position where I'm just sort of complaining about issues. I'm actually sort of taking up responsibility about ourselves. And I think even for us as Muslims as well, I think if we're to be honest about ourselves, I think there's a lot of self-reflection that we need to do about how much we're waiting for others to do what we should actually be doing. And sometimes, as a community, we're often sitting around waiting for things that are going to come because that's what the Quran taught us, but we haven't actually sort of paved the way for those things to happen. So I think it's really important for us individually to do what we need to do. And I'll give you there's a really sort of inspiring story that always sort of gets to me. In the 1400s, when the Ottomans, obviously this is where my biased Turkish background comes, but in the 1400s, when Sultan Fatih Mete became the Sultan at the age of 21, when he was setting out his priorities for his advisors and for the Ottoman Empire, he said that he wanted to conquer at the time, which was what was known as Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul. And his advisors were quick to say to him, like, Sultan, how are you going to do this? Your father couldn't do it, and your grandfathers couldn't do it. And at the time before him, the Ottomans were much more successful and much more powerful. And his response, always stuck with me to this day. And I think it's something that we can all learn going forward, which was basically, he said to his advisor, he says, look, he goes, forget about Istanbul, forget about Constantinople. He goes, I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to make myself a better person. I'm going to make sure that I'm the most equipped. Then I'm going to do that for my family. Then I'm going to do that for my friends. And then they're going to do the same thing. And then Istanbul will come to me. And that always really stuck with me. Partly because, when you look at his story, for example, he's someone who spoke 7 different languages, including Hebrew, Arabic, and many different languages. He was a scientist. He was a mathematician. He was a scholar. So, I think it's for all of us to be able to do what we need to do individually to bring about what that social change looks like. There's no point of us talking about it. So going back to what I was talking about before about, my journey, particularly into politics, when I was 20, I think I got to the point where I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do with myself? I keep talking about all of these issues. And then at the time, the Labour Party was recruiting for candidates, and I applied for it. It was a very brave move. I think if I had the mind I had now, I probably wouldn't have done it, just because knowing how it all works. But at the time, I think my naiveness probably helped me because I just, I was very fearless and naive and I didn't know how it worked. So when I put myself forward, I didn't think about all of the internal politicking at the time. And I stood for election, and I was elected as Hackney's youngest councillor ever at the age of 21. And my mission really from the start was very clear. It was to stand up for those who looked and sounded like me, but had lost faith that our political institutions essentially act in their best interest. I wanted to be their voice. And that's why, I always feel like I carry a huge burden at every single meeting that I go to, partly because, I think I recognize that for many people, I am the source of hope. And when they do come to us, it is at the point at which they are sort of very desperate in need. So I think we all have to sort of look at ourselves in our respective roles and think about, what responsibility do we carry and actually how we can go about making that change. After becoming a councillor, I think, I was really interested in about how we can make sure that, we could essentially reduce that and tackle socio-economic inequality. So I launched an inquiry into how we can build an inclusive economy in Hackney. And I'm actually proud to say that in Hackney now, we're employing more than 100 businesses. We're employing as an employer, as Hackney Council, we're employing more than 100 apprentices with starting salaries at £22,000. And I think for us, that's really important because if we're trying to tell other big businesses to do the same thing, we have to lead by example. And actually, the majority of those 100 apprentices are from backgrounds of similar to mine. So, in Hackney, we are a very diverse borough. We're known as the world in one borough. You've got a huge Turkish, Kurdish, Cypriot community. You've got a huge Black African Caribbean community. You've got a huge Vietnamese Orthodox Jewish community. And it's really important that our, both our politicians, but also our workforce is reflective of that, but also making sure that they're not just at lower entry level jobs, but also making sure that they're at high skilled jobs. Look, I don't want to sort of go on and on. I could talk for forever about, you know, what I do in politics, but I just want to leave you with one little story that essentially sort of inspired me to get into politics. And I think for me, it's a very personal story. You know, you could already hear it in my voice that I'm starting to be emotional when I'm starting to talk about it. But it was about that moment for me that really changed my life in terms of, you know, wanting to actually go about making a difference. I was about 13 or 14 at the time, and my father, he asked me to. It was half term in school holidays, and he asked me to go to work with him as he'd be paid that day, and he could treat me to a gift on the way back home. It was a Friday. That was the day he would get paid, and he was working in construction at the time. So he took me to work. I won't bore you with the whole day. At the end of the day, you know, I could visually see it in front of me right now, where he was queuing up to be paid. And his employer just said to him, "Ramsey, look, I don't really like the work that you've done. So instead of giving you £300, I'm only going to give you £150. I think for now, even now, I will never forget the look that Dad gave me. It was a real sense of shame, like as if he's let his son down. There was nothing he could do. You know, he couldn't speak English, and he was in a cash in hand job. So really, you know, like there was nothing he could sort of argue about it, because that was it really. You know, like what can he say? You know, what can he do? He couldn't go to the authorities because it was an illegal job at the time, because, you know, he shouldn't be doing that, working like that. And I think for me, you know, that was always something that really like stuck with me. It was a defining moment. I went back to home after. I tried to make it out as if I didn't see what happened, because I didn't want to, you know, embarrass him in that way, because I think that's quite a very difficult thing for any father to have to go through. So I went home and told my mum, and then my mum said to me, so she was like eating bread, and she put it aside, and she said, "Sit down." I sat down, and she said to me, so she goes, "Why are you telling me this?" And I said to her, "You know, I just wanted to tell you because this is what happened to Dad today. And, you know, maybe he might not bring all the money that he said he was going to bring and stuff. So he's not spending it on anything else. It's just that he didn't, because my dad was very prideful. So he didn't want to tell people, he didn't want to let down my mum as well." And then my mum just said to me, my mum looked at me and she just said to me, "Look, listen," she goes, "Don't come and tell me these problems if you're not going to go out there and do nothing about it." And I was like, "But Mum, what do you mean? I'm just like telling you what happened." And she goes, "Listen," she goes, "I don't want to hear it." She goes, "Unless you're willing to make a change about it," she goes, "don't come and tell me anything." She goes, "Me and your father have done everything we can to do what we can to put food on your table. Now it's time for you and your siblings to take it to the next level." And I think for me, that really stuck with me. And I'll just end by saying this, is that I think, look, we're all on this road where, you know, we're in a long journey where, you know, it's a never ending road really until we pass away, and even beyond that as well. And I think, you know, on that road, it's going to be a bumpy road sometimes. Sometimes there'll be people who will open the road for us, you know, like roadblocks for us, and we'll go faster, and our sort of, it'll be a great journey. And sometimes there'll be people who will put obstacles, and, you know, we'll have to face that. But I think what defines us as people and as human beings is how we react to those moments. And I think that's what can really, that's essentially what will make you as a person. So I think it's about how you react to those defining moments. And I think I'll just say that and leave it there. But thank you again for having me on this such important sort of platform. And I look forward to sort of discussing with you and hearing about what you've been up to so far during quarantine.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, and thank you for that real emotional and personal story towards the end there. It's got we've had quite a reaction and a lot of shout outs for your mother for the realness. I've just got a couple of questions, just for me personally. You know, yeah, I took note of what you said with regards to, you know, being the youngest councillor at the age of 20. If you were to know what you know now, and you were to go and tell, what's the one bit of advice you'd tell your 20-year-old self?
Well, that's a tough question. Partly, I feel like it should be the other way around sometimes. Sometimes I feel like my 20-year-old self should advise me, because sometimes I feel like, as I say now, it's weird. Like, and I'm being open and frank about this, you know, like, I feel like, you know, if I'm open and frank, I feel like, you know, alhamdulillah, like my career has really taken off in the last 2 years, particularly. But then sometimes I feel like, because I've got more to lose now, I've lost that fearlessness factor, which I had when I was 20. And I think that was really good. But I think, look, one thing that I would say to my 20-year-old self is definitely, and I think, this is something that all of us can learn at all ages, is really to say, look, like there are people out there who have done what you've done. When your parents tell you about their past stories, sometimes it's like, okay, mum, okay, dad, I know this is how it was in your day or whatever, or okay, uncle, how it was. But, there's people are telling you that from experience. I mean, maybe the context have changed, we live in technological advancements, like there's been new changes, lots of things, but a lot of the sentiments of those stories are very true. So really, for me, what I would advise myself is listen to people who've been on your journey before, and actually, you could cut a lot of time by learning from their mistakes. So just listen to them and stop assuming that you're always right.
Thank you for that. I can definitely learn from that one. And then there's a question I've just seen here. The question was what inspired you, which you've mentioned when you gave your talk. But say if someone does want to get into politics to try and make a difference, what's the one bit of advice you'd give them, and how can they do that? How can they get into politics, and where can they start?
Yeah, so I think, firstly from the start, I think your intentions about why you want to go into politics is the most important thing. I meet a lot of people, if I'm honest with you, who come to me often and say, Mete, like, how do I get into politics? How does the process work of being a candidate, of being a politician, etc.? But I think at the very start, you need to know why you want to be a politician. So I'll tell you the reason for that. It's because a lot of people will say to me, Mete, what's the next step for you? Are you looking to get into parliament? Are you looking to go on to be the mayor of London, to be the prime minister, whatever it is, right? Now, for me, my answer has always been the same, and it will always be the same. And which is always to say, look, I've got issues that I'm really passionate about. So that's about making sure that people, for example, from disadvantaged background have a voice in shaping their future. That's about tackling social inequality and making sure that everyone has a good level of education. I could go on and on and on. Now, what the purpose of me getting into politics was that I use politics as a vehicle to address the issues that I care about. So whichever means of vehicle that I can use to address those issues, I will use it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that to be a politician is always the best way to address those issues. There are plenty of people out there from across a range of different jobs who are actually much more impactful in actually addressing those issues. So I think that's the first thing to clarify. The second thing in relation to the process of being a politician and getting into politics, obviously, join a political party. I'm not going to sort of bore you with all of that. But, really it's just to carve out your niche, like think about yourself like a company, right? So when you're setting up a company, think about Apple. When Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he essentially, what he done was there were so many products, he stripped it down to 3 different products. And when he stripped it down to 3 different products, he says, okay, this is what we're going to be known for. So the iMac, the iMac computer, the MacBook, and then obviously the iPhone. And then people will always associate their talent with whatever it is, whatever the product is. And I feel like for us as human beings as well, it's really important that in our careers that we really carve out what is it that we should be known for. So when someone says Mete, what comes to mind? Do I know that he's really passionate about education, or he's got some really good ideas about democratic engagement? What is it? And I think what's really important is rather than being an expert in everything, be an expert in a couple of things, be really good at it. And then when you're going into politics, people will recognize that. So when I was going into politics, what people recognized was that I was really good at engaging with young people. And obviously, the party wants to engage with younger voters. So at the time, it kind of made sense that I was a candidate. Well, I mean, obviously, the party didn't give me the candidacy. I had to earn the votes because our selection system is very different. But what's really important is that when I was able to sell myself, I was able to pitch what my strength was. But also the final thing is, why are you the best person? That's the most important thing. Why are you the best person to do this and not someone else? You need to convince yourself before you can convince other people.
Thank you for that, Mete. A question from someone watching on our Facebook stream. What prejudices, if any, did you face or did you have to overcome as a Muslim in politics?
I think I was probably more paranoid about it than I thought. I think, look, let's be honest, we live in a very tolerant country. I think, there are some problems here, but in comparison to other countries and being able to openly practice our faith, it's much more open here. And alhamdulillah, like that is the case, and long may it continue, inshallah. In relation to when I first became a councillor, when I was going into politics, I'm not going to lie to you, I'll be honest, I always kept it very close to my heart. I didn't really, when you look at me, I'm not someone who visually would bring you, like I wouldn't sort of look like a Muslim for most people. So many people wouldn't assume or ask me unless they knew that my parents were of Turkish origin. So I never really kind of revealed like what my religion was. However, what I would say is that since the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has been elected as the Mayor of London, I think it's definitely changed a lot of attitudes, particularly in my political party. I think people even now come to me and say to me, "Are you going to pray on Fridays?" And I'm like, "Yo, chill. Like, I'm the Muslim here. You're not the Muslim." But I feel like it is like that has changed massively, and I feel like that's the importance of, that's the significance of, the Mayor of London being Muslim, is the fact that irrespective of what he does for Muslims, that's a whole other conversation, but his symbolic representation there will open a lot of doors for us. So I think, like, hopefully the more and more people of Muslim background or ethnic minority backgrounds that we see in positions of leadership, hopefully that will make it much more easier for us to sort of be open about our own personal experiences.
Thank you I definitely agree with that. I've got, again, just with what's going on with the current pandemic, and I've been fortunate enough to host a series of webinars with people of all sorts of backgrounds, and obviously the pandemic has been quite high on the agenda when we've been discussing issues and sort of various aspects of society and community. This is the first time I've been sat down with a politician. From your point of view, what do you think is going to be the hardest challenge coming out of this pandemic? And I appreciate that's a difficult question and it's an open-ended question, so please take your time with that one.
I think the biggest challenge is, ultimately going to be the financial impact, because that will filter through to so many different levels, whether it's, the level of healthcare that you get, whether it's sort of your career opportunities, whether it's sort of, the environment. In many ways, it's going to be about the financial. I think the problem is as I said, it's the coronavirus essentially exposes a lot of the inequalities that we have in society and further amplifies it by like times by 100. That's the problem. If you look at the scale of how much the financial impact is, compare it to 2008 with the financial crisis. For example, when you look at quantitative easing, the Bank of England over here printed 200 billion in response to sort of the initial packages that the government introduced. In comparison to that, in 2008, they only produced 40 billion. Like there's and 2008 was a huge, massive impact on our sort of economy. When you look at sort of the austerity measures that followed it, someone's going to have to pay up for it. That's the problem. The problem is like we've spent a lot of money, and rightly so. That money should be spent. Problem is someone's going to have to pay for it. Now the political choice is who pays for it. So in the last 10 years, it's been ordinary folk like us who have to pay for it. Younger people who've had their career jobs and their prospects, ripped apart because obviously, or we're having to pay, equal level of tax, whereas people like Richard Branson, can get away with paying no tax, but then he's got the cheek to come back and ask the government to bail him out for the current crisis. That's the problem. So if we need to, it's going to be a political choice. I don't want to sort of be too political here. I'm not too, how do I say this? I'm not too convinced that this government will necessarily sort of be on the side of people like us and workers. I think they will be predominantly sort of like looking to benefit their supporters, mainly predominantly sort of their donors, and won't be sort of, like passing the buck on them. But at the same time, I'm positive too. Look, I mean, I'm not just saying everything that the government done is bad. I think what the government's financial response has actually been very good. And I think we need to be honest about that. We can't play political politics there. There's a question mark about how it filters through, but in terms of their commitments, it's actually been very good. And, when you look at America, for example, it's so bad, like people are getting $1,200 checks, right? But that's nothing. You're getting a one-off $1,200 check. But, you got your monthly rent to pay. How long is this going to last for? People are getting laid off work. Over here, at least we've got, like a furlough scheme and, all right, we don't know what's going to happen after 3 months, but at least it gives some time for people to go off and do things. Obviously, you've got the mortgage deferrals, the rental deferrals, councils including council tax deferrals. There are lots of things that are happening here, which is much more positive. But I think, ultimately, I just feel like we're very unlucky as a generation. And, I think we need to be honest about it in the sense that, it's unfortunate that, when I was getting into my, going to my university time, tuition fees trebled, EMA got scrapped. We were living through austerity. financial crisis happens, then now this is happening, Brexit happens, you know, like, it's like we've had nothing great happen over the last 10 years, and who knows what's going to happen over the next 10 years, you know. But what's really important is that unless we all demand to have a say, these people will get away with these decisions. So we all need to make sure that we're voting at every single election, making sure that we're engaging with our local politician, engaging with through convening spaces like this, making sure that our voices are being heard. Because the problem is with people like us, too often we talk among ourselves. People, decision makers don't hear about these, what we think. They hear it from only a certain type of people, and the decisions that they're taking, they think that they're actually taking good decisions, but they're not the right decisions. So we need to make sure that we're involved.
Okay, just on that, you were talking about sort of people, how people, you know, will talk sort of amongst themselves, but you know, they won't say it to the politicians. How does one go about speaking to the politicians? I appreciate that, you know, we all have a right to vote in this country, so we can go to the polling stations and vote. But we're in, so we've got a Conservative government for the next 5 years, and I'm very wary of that. And I also don't want to turn this into a political conversation. But is it a case of people, you know, you encourage people to go to chat to their local MP in their local constituencies and talk to them, or do you, you know, are you saying that we should be, you know, using other means to sort of have our voices heard? What's the best way to have a voice heard, or to get your voice heard?
I think, look, there are obviously like the obvious ways where you can go and talk to your local MP. You can go and you know, like engage in parliamentary discussions and all that sort of stuff, which are the obvious ones. I think what's more interesting is about a new wave of activism that you see coming through over the past, you know, 5 years. You see that with the youth climate strikes, for example, with how young people from children are organizing. I think people have to think out the box. Just because someone hasn't done anything, it doesn't mean that it can't be done. Nothing was an idea until everything was impossible until it was done, right? So we have to kind of think about, you know, think out the box. How can we engage people? There are petitions that you can get involved in. Get involved with Open Iftar. Talk about how you want to sort of like maybe next year have a discussion about how we could shape society, or how we could shape our community next year. You know, there are lots of things that you can do to do it. You know, and I'm more than happy to, as a follow-up, you know, if you guys want to get in touch and sort of to give you a bit more detailed ways in which avenues in which you can go about making change. But also, again, you don't have to be involved in politics as a politician per se. You know, you can do it through other jobs. You know, get into a union, join a union, for example. If you're part of a union, you're going to have better representation. You can make good representation about your work to your union, which will talk to the government and make that representation. So there are lots of different ways in which you can sort of be part of the conversation. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a politician.
Thanks for that. I've got some more questions coming up. What steps can we take to motivate people to get involved, especially the young? So I'm going to sort of, this is from Iman, but I'm going to talk to as from my sort of personal point of view. So I'm still in my 20s, but towards the latter end. I've got sort of younger relatives who are sort of in that 16, 17 sort of age bracket. Some are slightly older. And I'm always finding a hard time just trying to get them to sort of be in touch with like the world and sort of meet the world where it's at, because there's so many distractions, whether it's someone making a TikTok video or someone, you know, doing YouTubing or Vine or whatever. I mean, Vine hasn't existed for a while, which shows you my age. But how do we sort of engage that sort of 15 to sort of 20-year-old age of, you know, those people who have gone through this pandemic? They may not have remembered, you know, the last, you know, global recession, and, you know, they might be a bit anxious, or they might be a bit nervous about the future and have sort of, you know, have that anxiety. How do we get them to A, to think more positively, and B, get them engaged to actually do something about the future, to actually empower themselves?
Very good question, actually. I think what's really important is that when we think about our engagement methods, it's really important that we go to them and we go to their platforms and think about how we can engage with them in a way that appeals to them. So, you know, even when you think about like what we do with My Life, My Say, partly the reason why we host the democracy cafes is partly because we know that, you know, a lot of young people will socialize at Starbucks for a frappuccino or for a coffee. So it's a way of us getting into those spaces where people feel more comfortable. Not to say that that's going to cater for all young people. I think one thing that we should recognize, and I think you've rightly recognized it in your question, is that, you know, too often there's an assumption that young people are one big homogenous group. and it doesn't necessarily. I think people often forget the intersectionalities that exist among our groups of the age ranges that you mentioned. You know, young women have different challenges. If you're a young woman of color, then you have 3 different challenges: the fact that you're young, the fact you're a woman, and plus the fact that you're of color as well. If you're a Muslim as well, then that's even further sort of barrier as well in many ways as well. So there are lots of these different intricacies that we have to really, nuances that we have to think about in terms of our engagement methods. So really going to people, what do they enjoy doing? So when you spoke about TikTok, it gave me, it sparked a memory in my mind. I remember I was doing this workshop a couple of years ago with some 16 and 17-year-olds who were completing NCS, and I was trying to like engage them in political discussion. And I was saying, okay, well, let's just think about what are the big you know, trendy things at the moment. At that time, Pokemon Go came out. So one of the young people there who was 16, he said to me, yeah, I'm really interested in Pokemon Go. I love it, love playing it. It just came out. He was always on the phone. So I said to him, what's on the news about Pokemon Go now, like at the moment? And luckily, you know, like I had watched the news that day, so I kind of like was able to think on the spot. And he said to me, I don't know. So, and I was like, okay. I was like, does anyone else know? And then someone else said, oh, yeah, like, so I saw that they might share your location with the government. And then I looked back at the boy who said that, and I said, how do you feel about that? Do you want other people to know where you are when you're playing Pokemon Go? And he was like, no. He goes, that's my privacy. I want to, like, you know, I'm playing Pokemon. It's my time. And then someone else had actually said, you know what? Like, so it's a good thing if people know where I am, because if something happens to me, then people can find me. And I was like, look, well, there you go. That's politics. I mean, like without even thinking about it, you guys have been talking about politics, about the fact that, you know, like the government wants to introduce measures to find out where you are. So I think what's really important to us is thinking about the language barrier. So making sure that we're speaking in a way that is appealing to those people in their language. But also like thinking about creating activities that are able to sort of cater to their interests, you know? And because as you rightly say, we all have different interests, and we need to make sure that we cater our engagement methods to everyone's interests.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with that, and you know, I think it is a challenge, and I think it will always be a challenge of how we can always relate to that that particular age group. And I always focus to that age group because so much happens in that 5 years, like from like sort of 15, 16, where like you're going through your GCSEs, you know, your school teachers are telling you that, you know, this is the most important exams of your life, and then you go through college and they're the most important things, and then you're 18 and now you're an adult and you're supposed to have it all figured out, when really you're still a kid. Like, you know, you're still developing, you know, as human beings. You're still sort of developing mentally and physically. And, you know, I always appreciate and I always have a lot of sympathy for, you know, sort of people in that age bracket, because, you know, we live in a world, especially with social media, where, you know, it is just constant, it is full on. And, you know, people always have that thing. They've always feel that they have to have it figured out. Like, you know, you've got to be 18, you've got to have this car, or you've got to be going to uni, or you've got to be, you know, you've got to be a millionaire by 21. And, you know, I think sometimes, and one of the reasons I do this, and I like sort of having a platform to speak to, just to say to the people that age range is, listen, it's fine if you're not, you know, if you haven't got it figured out yet. You know, you've got time on your hands. You know, just you know, be true to yourself, be honest with yourself. And I think, you know, the other thing what people also need to realize is that, you know, to have any success, whether it's in this dunya or in the akhirah, that to get that level of success, you know, you can't cheat it. There's no shortcuts. You have to put the hours in. You have to pay your dues. So I think those were like sort of, you know, that's why I always have sympathy for that age range, because everyone's always telling them that, you know, whether it be your GCSEs, your A levels, your university degree, or, you know, your social status, that's what's going to define you. And the message for us is, and the message, you know, I'm not, you know, speaking out of term when I say I'm speaking on behalf of, you know, Open Iftar Ramadan 10 project, is that, you know, it's fine if, you know, if you haven't got it figured out. I think what you have to do is you have to be open and honest with yourselves. And I think that you have to remember that everyone else around you is human as well. And that's what brings us all together. The fact that we are human, you know, we might be different. You know, you know yourself. You were born. You're from Hackney. I'm from, you know, Middlesbrough and I'm, you know, born and raised in Middlesbrough. You know, as you can tell from my accent, you know, my parents are from, from Pakistan, or my family's from Pakistan. You know, my grandparents were like first generation who were immigrants and came to this country. So, you know, I think I think everyone's got a different story to share, and everyone is different. But what we're doing here is just celebrating that diversity and unity, and it's creating that safe space. So, my message out to everyone is that this is a safe space. So, please, raise your hand, interact with us. If you've got any more questions for us, we're here, whether it be in this chat or whether it be in our social media channels. So those are sort of just what I want to add on that. I've got a couple of more things. Oh, Mete. Go on, sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. I was just going to say, like, it's really important what you're saying, because, first I'll just say, Middlesbrough, you had a great football team before, growing up.
What, in the 90s with Janino and Ravanelli?
Yeah.
Good old days.
Yeah,
that's why I became a Man United supporter after that.
Yeah, that's quite funny. But in terms of, I feel, look, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think the big problem with this pandemic is as well, it's like, a lot of us are stuck in homes. And look, it's okay to say, like, you're not feeling all, great at the moment as well. I feel like we need, partly the reason why I think this is so great as well. Like, honestly, I'm actually really happy the fact that I don't see myself as a speaker thing. I'm just happy to be among other people, to just be talking and, it's like, however minutes before Iftar, and it's just nice, it's nice for your own mental health as well. Like, we're not used to being stuck indoors. And I think, I can't imagine the impact that that's having, particularly on sort of the younger generations. And I think, they've got so much pressure on them, like you said, around their job opportunities. Personally, I don't even think you need to have it figured out to your age 30, or even then, like, I feel like, when you finish university, it's your time to explore, trying to, learn about life, learn about different cultures, get into different jobs, find out what you want to do. And then when you get to, if there's no like timeline and there's no one formula for every one person, but I do think that, society definitely, it sets up people to fail. Instagram, and social media definitely sets up people to fail, because of course you're not going to only sort of post things of you when it's not going well. You're only going to post things when they're really going well. And when people are looking at your story, like last year, I kid you not, guys, right? Last year was my most successful year, but it was my most toughest year as well. And there are challenges that I went through that no one will ever know, right? That at some points I just thought to myself, do you know what? I can't do this no more. I've never felt like that in my life. I'm a very determined person. But there was one particular incident which definitely made me feel like I can't do this no more. And that's very surprising for a lot of people that know me to hear that. But at the same time as well, like, it was an amazing year as well. But you would never know about what didn't happen. You will only see what is happening, right? So you'll see the fact that, for example, I was awarded by the Queen with an MBE, or you would see the fact that I went to this holiday, or I done this, that, and you'd be like, oh wow, like Mete's had a great year, but actually you don't know the challenges I went through. And I think that's the problem. I think we need to start being a bit more open about, our lives, and that's fine. It's okay, like, we shouldn't, judge people because they're going through certain challenges, So I think what you guys are doing, honestly, is amazing, because I think certainly even this call, it's definitely helped my mental health as well, just in terms of, just connecting and seeing lots of different faces.
Thank you for that, Mete. I just want to add on that. I mean, what you said there about, sometimes you don't have to have it figured out by 30, and just, for everyone listening out there, I'm sort of in my late 20s, and although it might look like it, trust me, I haven't got it figured out either. We're all in this together. And, I think just one thing I just want to touch on what you've just said there is, that you sharing that story actually just, has made you so much, sort of made you human. And obviously me sharing my views has made us more human. And I think that's what we try to do here. And I think that's what my message is to everyone, is that, everyone, Open Iftar and Ramadan Tent Project, we are open to people of faiths and none, of all faiths and none. And, it doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your class is, doesn't matter what, school you study at, what university you went to. The key thing is that we are all human. And I think, and the other final thing I want to add before I go on to Hawazin for her question is that don't underestimate the power of the individual. So don't underestimate what you have, the power you have as an individual, but also don't underestimate the power you have as a community. So those are just my final thoughts. Hawazin, I believe you've got a question.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Hawazin. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. I'm okay, and you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Thank you, Mete, for your talk. It was super inspiring. We've got a lot of questions in the chat, and I was wondering, just after what you were saying right now, you said like last year it was hard, and you were like you wanted to give up. But what was the thing that let you say, "Oh no, actually, I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna come back and do what I have to do, etc., etc." What was the thing? Where did you find your motivation? Because there will be always like we can see right now the COVID-19 is hurting so many people, and it's hard for everyone. So I was wondering, what was your motivation? Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think for me, definitely, in this case, there was one friend who and I'm someone who's very personal. I don't, often share too much. Like, maybe I'll share it on reflection, but I wouldn't. Whilst it's happening, I wouldn't share what's happening with a lot of people. And there's only probably 1 or 2 people I could do with. And my friend was really, really helpful to me during that time. Just like even sitting next to me and just sort of letting me talk, for like 2 or 3 hours. He probably wouldn't even say nothing, but just, being able to talk to someone, that was really good. Like, because I think keeping it in me and thinking was really difficult. I feel like in terms of my, the main things I'd say, the other things that really kept me going was 2 other things. One is my family. Look, my parents come from, as I said, from Northern Cyprus. Northern Cyprus is not a recognized country. We don't even have an emoji on WhatsApp, in case you're wondering. But, my parents came here with big challenges. And of course, like seeing them go through the challenges that they did in terms of, like my dad, the jobs he's done, like the man done, dishwashing, like, as I said, construction, is a cab driver now, loads of other jobs. He never once, thought, oh, like this is long, I'm going to go back to Cyprus and live comfortably, or, whatever it is. So I just think to myself, if my parents came here to do this for us, there is no way I can just sort of give up just because of, a bump that I'm facing along the road. I need to really push through. They've gone through challenges. They've been through it. They've been through worse challenges because they had physical language barriers, financial barriers that, alhamdulillah, like I don't have necessarily as to the extent that they did. So why should I give up? And then the third thing is, most importantly is, as I said, like for me, it's like, as I always, when I said earlier as well, when I wanted to be a politician, I think, you have to ask yourself the question, why are you the best person to be putting yourself forward? And for me, it's the belief that I have in me that I am still, like particularly for my community, I still believe that I am the best person for this role. And I believe that, I will go to the lengths that others won't. And I think it's that belief, that knowing that if I left it, there'll be people who will be left behind if there wasn't people like me actually championing their voices. So I feel like whilst I still believe that, I can still be that person, then I will still do my best to do it. And if I don't see anyone else who can go off and do that, then I will do my best to not let go.
Thank you for that. Just want to give people an update. We've got a few more questions and we have got time for a couple of more questions. The Adhan today will be at 8:16 and we'll have a video playing the Adhan. In the chat section for all who are interested, we've got basically a translation of what the Adhan means. So please feel free to read that. Feel free to share that with everyone. A couple more questions, Mete. What's your one goal for this Ramadan? Have you set any goals for this Ramadan? Anything you want to sort of work on? Anything you want to share with everyone?
I've got a couple of things actually. I want to tone up a bit more. So that's definitely one thing. Physically, I want to eat better. So like, inshallah, like I'm thinking even when I'm breaking fast, I'm not going to be diving into like big fried food. I'm going to be a bit like Sharif actually, like eating well, trying to like have soup, have a little bit of break and then thing. I think further advance my knowledge, both Islamically, but also, around other issues, catching up with people that I haven't spoken to for a long time. And I feel like now we don't have an excuse to not to, because we're at home. So just really scheduling like video calls, seeing people, saying hello to them. I think that's going to be really important for me. What else is there? I think definitely, not also look, sometimes we get put in situations, it's not easy, right? And I'm not always saying that. What I'm going to say to you is I'm not saying it's necessarily a blanket rule for everyone, because I understand that everyone has different challenges and it's not the same as necessarily that I would go through. But I'm not going to treat this coronavirus pandemic time as a holiday and just think, okay, I'm just going to sit by here and then life will resume and then I'll carry on. No. I think what's really important is that we need to think about how we going to use this time to do something different, to also further art, like what is it that you wanted to do in your career? How can you do it differently? So even with My Life, My Say, I think, like a lot of people have been getting in touch with us because we've just recently launched this quarantine question time straight after lockdown. And we've had more than 3,500 people who've connected online in just 3 sessions, which is like remarkable given the fact that, like we've never done online events before. And now, we're getting a lot of press coverage, we're doing a lot of good stuff. So I think, it's really important that for me is that not only I'm sort of doing the little things that I want to do, but also, I'm still advancing my career, and I'm not just sort of, just on a pause and then we'll wait and then try to lift it back up. Like, we are where we are and we need to find a way out, and where there's a will, there's always a way.
Thanks for that. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people are in your are in that same boat where they are sort of using this as an opportunity to sort of better grow and sort of develop themselves. I mean, just talking to people just on a daily basis, whether it be, in the sort of the journalism world, or whether it be in, in my own industry, which is the engineering industry, people are sort of using this opportunity to, sort of develop their knowledge, develop themselves spiritually, mentally, and obviously get fit. I think you're not the only person who wants to tone up a bit more. I think that's definitely one of my goals as well. So, and I think there's quite a few brothers and sisters here who probably want to be doing the same as well. And everyone, I think, is trying to eat healthier as well. So I think we're all in this. I think that's just a reminder that we are all in this together.
It's hard doing that when you're from a Turkish background. I'll just say that now, yeah? Like, trying to eat it's really, really difficult. Like, especially when you've got a Turkish mum who just wants to continue to feed you until you go sleep. It's really difficult. But I'm going to try my best, inshallah.
No, I share your pain, brother. I mean, especially having, coming from a Pakistani background, when you've got like, you try to eat healthy and you say no fried food, but, on the first iftar, your mother or your wife is putting your samosas in front of you, or pakoras, or, some kebabs, which have, been deep fried. And, part of you saying like, I'm going to be healthy, but then 9 times out of 10, you're always giving. So, but listen, that's something, listen, it's something we can all work on, but again, it's just a reminder that, we are all in this together. If you feel you're going through a challenge, I just want to, again, just remind people that you're not going through this on your own. There's a whole community out there. There are people who are, handling things differently, and not everyone's got it figured out. So that's, the key message of what I want everyone to leave with today. On that note, we do have 8 minutes till the adhan, so I do appreciate that people want to spend a bit of time just reflecting before the adhan. So, Mete, I just want to say on behalf of myself and everyone at Ramadan 10 Project and Open Iftar, thank you for today. Thank you for this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've definitely learned a lot. It's definitely opened my mind up, and it's, I've definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things and how I think. So thank you for that. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's watched today, everyone who's asked questions, everyone who's interacted. Without you, we'd be nothing. This wouldn't work. So this is a community initiative. This is we are there for the community, and our goal is to bring communities together to better understand each other, and we can't when we do that with the community. Finally, I've just got a couple of things. I just want to again remind you all. Again, we've got our fundraising page, which is launchgood.com/MOI, which is short for My Open Iftar. For those of you who've got the packs or the e-packs, there are costs to that. So if you want to see someone else enjoy a My Open Iftar, whether it be a virtual one or whether they have one in their own homes, please, we'd really appreciate if you donate to that. But also we are working with the Feed the NHS and Feed the Frontline initiative. So as part of every donation, funds will be going towards feeding the frontline and feeding the NHS for an iftar meal. You can also scan the QR codes as part of your packs. There'll be a QR code in there, and also with the adhan coming up, we're asking people to share their adhans at home. So if there's a family of you and someone's doing the adhan, we'd really love for you guys to take a video of that, upload it to social media and hashtag adhan at home. We'd really appreciate that. And finally, after the adhan plays, although we will be switching off, iftar, everyone will be at home having their iftars together. What we do encourage is that people take photos and videos of their iftar meals and share them on our social media platforms with the hashtag MyOpenIftar. So those are just my last calls. We've got a few moments to before the adhan, so I think we've got 5 or 6 minutes. In the chat section, you will have seen that the translation of the adhan has been written down. There's also, as part of the My Open Iftar packs, there's also the booklets which have the meanings. And this can, and you guys are free to use them, and we encourage you to use them. As part of the My Open Iftar booklets, we've also got the bunting, the balloons, and the colouring paper with the coloured crayons. Please decorate your homes. Please share your videos. Please share your photographs. And finally, I just want to say to everyone that thank you for joining us today. And I just want to spend the next couple of minutes for everyone just to reflect, make dua if you would like to make dua. Before I do that, I've got one final request I've just had in. We want to show everyone that this is working, and I want to see everyone's face who has joined in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mukhtar if he would be kind enough to unblock everyone's video, and if everyone can put their screen on gallery view. And I want everyone to spend some time just looking around, seeing what a diverse group of people we have. And also, when on my call, I want to get everyone to wave at the camera for 5 seconds. I can see more and more people joining. Please don't be shy, guys. MashaAllah, there's a good group of people here, and it's a very diverse group of people. So in 3, 2, 1, I want everyone to wave at the camera. Jazakallah khair for that. And once again, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. There's 3 or 4 minutes to go till the adhan. So if you want to take this opportunity to make dua before the adhan, please do. If you want to take this opportunity to just reflect about the current environment you're in, please do. I'm going to ask Mukhtar to just put on, get the video ready for the adhan. And then, I just want to say that on behalf of myself, thank you very much. Please join us throughout the month of Ramadan. Tomorrow we've got Sheikh Haytham who will be joining us. So if you have any questions, the Sheikh is very knowledgeable, obviously, and he will endeavour to answer all your questions. So on behalf of myself, everyone at Open Iftar and the Ramadan 10 project, Jazakallah khair for joining us, and thank you very much.